The rooftop cafe behind Ferris Tower had the best view in the district. Yet every day at noon, one table sat like an island in the middle of a crowded sea. Around it, executives clinked coffee cups and closed deals over salads, laughter drifting across the open-air terrace. But the chairs surrounding that one table stayed empty, day after day, as if some invisible current pushed everyone else away. The woman who sat there was Diane Ashworth, founder and CEO of Ashworth Logistics, a shipping and freight empire that moved cargo across 3 continents. She wore tailored blazers in muted colors, kept her hair pinned back with quiet precision, and carried herself with the kind of composure people mistake for coldness. Beneath the table sat a sleek black wheelchair, its wheels polished, its frame a permanent part of who she now was. Before we go further, if you believe kindness still has the power to change a life, take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and follow along for more. Your support helps these stories reach people who need them. Every weekday at noon, Diane rolled herself to the same corner table near the potted lemon trees. She ordered the same iced tea and turkey wrap, watched the skyline shimmer in the afternoon light, and ate in a silence that had become so familiar it barely stung anymore. From a distance, she looked untouchable. Magazines wrote about her as the woman who rebuilt a failing freight company into a billion-dollar operation in under a decade. Business schools used her rise as a case study in resilience, but none of those articles mentioned the empty chairs. 6 years earlier, a car accident on a rain-slick overpass had taken the use of her legs and, in the same breath, taken her husband. She had spent 8 months relearning how to stand at a podium, how to shake hands without flinching, how to walk into a boardroom in a wheelchair and make people forget to notice. She succeeded, mostly. Employees respected her fiercely. Clients trusted her judgment completely, but respect had somehow replaced closeness, and no one ever sat beside her unless business demanded it. She told herself she preferred it that way. It was easier to believe that than to admit how much she missed the ordinary noise of shared company. On a warm Thursday in early autumn, construction scaffolding lined the block outside Ferris Tower as crews repaired storm damage to the building's east wing. Among the workers was Marcus Doyle, a soft-spoken carpenter raising his 7-year-old daughter, Wren, alone since his wife had passed from a sudden illness 2 winters before. School had let out early that day for a staff conference, so Wren tagged along, sitting on an overturned bucket near the supply tent, sketching the pigeons that gathered on the railing. At lunchtime, Marcus opened his cooler and pulled out 2 peanut butter sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, the same lunch he packed most days. Money was tight since his wife's medical bills, and he'd learned to stretch every dollar so Wren never noticed what they went without. He never complained about it. He believed a person's dignity had nothing to do with the size of their lunch, and everything to do with how they treated the people around them. Looking for a shaded spot to eat, Marcus and Wren wandered onto the terrace cafe, where the umbrellas offered relief from the sun. That's when Wren spotted the woman sitting by herself near the lemon trees, an entire ring of empty chairs around her like a moat no one dared cross. Wren tilted her head, the way children do when they notice something unfair before they understand the word for it. Without asking permission, she walked straight toward the table, her sandwich still in hand. Marcus hurried after her, mortified, already rehearsing an apology for disturbing someone who was clearly important. Before he could get the words out, Wren smiled and asked if they could sit close by, because she liked watching the pigeons from that side of the terrace. And did the lady mind sharing the lemon tree? Diane blinked. No one had asked her that in years. Not a nervous excuse, not a pitying glance toward her chair, just a small girl wanting to sit near the birds. She found herself nodding, and to her own surprise, smiling in a way that felt unfamiliar on her face. That lunch lasted only 20 minutes, but it left Diane lighter than any client dinner she'd attended in months. Wren chattered about wanting to become a marine biologist, insisting that pigeons were simply city dolphins that hadn't discovered water yet. Marcus apologized twice for his daughter's imagination, though he was clearly used to it, and clearly proud of it too. Diane laughed, a real laugh, rusty from disuse, and something in her chest loosened just slightly. When the meal ended, Marcus thanked her for tolerating his daughter's worst curiosity, and assumed that would be the last of it. But the next day, Wren asked to sit by the lemon trees again. And the day after that, soon, without either adult quite deciding it, lunch together became routine. The conversations deepened slowly, the way trust does when it isn't forced. Marcus admitted how exhausting it was raising a daughter alone, working double shifts to cover both rent and daycare. Terrified every day that he was failing at both jobs he now had to be. Diane confessed that despite running a company with 12,000 employees, she went home, each night to an apartment so quiet she sometimes turned on the television just to hear voices. Neither one offered advice. They simply listened, and somehow that was enough. People at Ashworth Logistics began to notice the change in her before she noticed it herself. She started remembering names of employees she'd only ever seen on org charts. She asked about people's kids, their weekends, their worries. She approved an expanded parental leave policy that had been sitting untouched in a drawer for 2 years. Meetings that once felt like interrogations began to feel like conversations. Productivity didn't rise because people feared her more. It rose because, for the first time, they felt like she actually saw them. One afternoon, Diane wheeled past the East Wing and noticed Marcus repairing a section of railing with the kind of care most people reserve for something they love. His tools were worn smooth from years of use, but every joint he fixed was precise, unhurried, exact. She learned later that he'd turned down 2 site supervisor promotions already, both of which paid significantly more, because the hours would have kept him away from Wren too many evenings. That stuck with her longer than she expected. Weeks later, Ashworth Logistics posted a newly created position, Head of Facilities and Site Safety, with flexible scheduling built into the role from day one. The salary nearly matched what a supervisor would earn, but the hours were designed around school pickups and evenings at home. When HR offered Marcus the job, he assumed there had been some clerical error. There hadn't been. Diane had simply noticed a kind of excellence that no one else had bothered to look for. The biggest moment, though, was still ahead. Months later, at the company's annual town hall, Diane wheeled herself onto the stage in front of nearly 1,000 employees. Instead of discussing quarterly earnings or expansion plans, she spoke about loneliness. She admitted, in front of everyone, that she had spent years mistaking respect for connection, and that despite every professional milestone she'd achieved, she had forgotten how to simply be known by another person. She said real leadership wasn't measured by how efficiently a company ran, but by whether the people inside it ever felt invisible. Then she asked Marcus and Wren to join her on stage. The applause that followed wasn't polite office clapping. It rose from somewhere deeper, because everyone in that room understood, all at once, the quiet story behind those countless solitary lunches. A little girl had crossed a boundary the adults around her had been too afraid to cross. A father had offered simple respect instead of hesitation, and together, without meaning to, they'd reminded an entire company that kindness doesn't require permission. Inspired by what had happened, Ashworth Logistics rolled out mentorship programs pairing senior staff with new hires, an emergency assistance fund for employees facing hardship, and an open lunch initiative, encouraging teams to eat together instead of scattering to their desks. Other companies in the district heard about it and started similar programs of their own. What began with one shared sandwich under a lemon tree eventually reshaped how thousands of people experienced their workplace. If this story means something to you, consider liking it, sharing it with someone who might need a reminder today, and following for more stories like this one. Your support helps them reach people who are quietly struggling. As the seasons turned, the terrace at Ferris Tower changed too. The lemon trees grew fuller, pigeons still gathered along the railing, and the chairs around Diane's table were never empty again. Some days, new hires joined her to ask career questions. Other days, longtime employees sat down just to talk about nothing in particular. And every Friday, without exception, Marcus and Wren brought 2 peanut butter sandwiches and a third one for Diane, because Wren insisted lemon tree lunches weren't the same without 3 chairs filled. Before this story ends, we'd love to hear from you. What small act of kindness changed your life, or someone else's? Your story in the comments might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. As the late afternoon light spread gold across the skyline, Diane looked around the table crowded now with laughter and half-eaten sandwiches, and understood something she hadn't let herself believe in years. Her company had been built by determination. Her recovery had been built by sheer will. but it was one small girl's simple question, asked without hesitation or pity, that finally gave her back the one thing success alone could never provide: somewhere to belong. In a city that so often rushes past the people who look a little different, 3 ordinary lives proved that sometimes the most extraordinary change begins with nothing more than an empty chair and the courage of a child brave enough to sit in it.